Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshop, where we get together in the middle of the week to learn more about technology. Have you ever thought about your car and that it might be spying on you? You know, I never really thought about that much, but this morning, one of the people that I meet with at McDonald's told me that when she gets in her car and starts it up, before she even backs out the car says to her, traffic doesn't look too bad on the way to McDonald's. And I'm going, how does that car know that she's going to McDonald's on this? So I've started wondering about that. And Dale Harrington of the Mile High Computer Resource Organization, or MICRO, has been thinking about that a lot too, about how our cars might be spying on us and learning about us. So he's going to share today what he's learned and what we can do, or maybe what we can't do about that. So Dale, if you want to unmute and help educate us on what our cars are doing to us.
Okay, thank you, John. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully things will go well. I hope you're seeing my bizarre looking intro. So the question is your car spying on you?
Okay, and you're not sharing your screen.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you were sharing your Zoom screen, which looks exactly like my Zoom screen.
I apologize.
No, that was me.
Well, that was actually me. I think I hit the wrong button. I think that looks different now, right?
That does.
Okay. So, what's going on? And why might this be important? So, you know, we go out, we spend our hard-earned money on a brand new car, and we think, well, you know, we sign all the documents at the dealership, and we take the car home, and we don't think much about the documents we signed. But your car might be ratting you out to your insurance company. An article in the New York Times talked about a gentleman whose insurance rates jumped 21% on him. The OnStar system in his Chevy Bolt was sending his driving habits to LexisNexis, which is a data collection company, and they sold it to his insurance company, which then said, oh, he's not a great driver, so they raised his rates. According to the article, LexisNexis had over 200 pages of info on this gentleman's driving habits. That's kind of scary when you think about it. But most modern cars, especially if your car can communicate via satellite or internet somehow, you have a mapping database in there that is real time. That means it does have a connection to the internet, and that means it can report back to the mothership. So there's some good news about this. You can go online at LexisNexis, and there are other organizations that apparently collect data. I'm not sure about all of them because the information is fragmented. And you can request that they send you a report on information they have collected on you. And one thing about this, when you go online to request this, you will have to give them your social security number and your driver's license number, which some people may not wish to do. But again, they probably already know it anyhow, because you signed a bunch of documents at the dealership, and guess what? Probably one of them had your driver's license number, which probably courtesy of your state has been linked to your social security number. So I followed the link that the article provided, which goes to the LexisNexis site, and I just was able to do that actually just the day before I prepared this presentation for the micro group. And I anticipated getting something back in a few weeks because they send you an old-fashioned letter in the mail. And I actually got it back pretty quickly. I submitted the request online on the 27th and I got it back on the 4th of April. But the letter was pretty much a boilerplate with information about how to access these reports. And at least it had a link that would take me to Colorado specific information because that's where I live. One thing about this, the reason that's important that it might have links to specific states is different states have different privacy laws. Several states, for example, California, Colorado, Connecticut, New York, I believe, have pretty strict privacy laws, and you're able to access and even get in and request that your information is not sold or collected even. So I downloaded the 2 reports. In the letter they sent me was a link and a PIN, or a password, if you will. And don't lose that letter or that PIN, because the PDFs you're going to download are secured with that PIN. Every time you open them, you're going to have to enter that PIN. So even though you've downloaded the PDF onto your computer, it is password protected. This Data Privacy Act was kind of interesting. It had a lot of personal information, phone records, identification records, email, business association, motor vehicle registration, marketing records, something called digital identity intelligence and digital authentication records, which didn't make much sense to me, and what they call ID analytics. I haven't had really much time to go over all the details in them. Each report is over 40 pages. So, and my older car does not collect information on me, so mainly what's in this report is probably just publicly available stuff or marketing information provided by merchants, things like this. Another report, which they didn't explain what the acronym LNCDR means, I couldn't find it anywhere in their references. It contains more personal information, but in a different format and some different information. Something called address characteristic, phone records again, online marketing records, property deed records, property assessor records. Yes, they know what your property taxes are. Insurance policy records, property insurance claim records, and inquiry records. Now, the inquiry records, some of you who may have requested your credit report from one of the big credit agencies might be familiar with that, showing you who's been accessing your credit report. I found one thing interesting in this particular report. The only thing listed under my inquiry records were once a month my Discover card is apparently accessing my credit records. I have no idea why. So, you know, but they do it every month. And that was the only thing in my record. I'm still plowing through everything, trying to figure out what all they have. I also followed the link to the Colorado specific information and requested that, which I have not received yet. So, moving on, there was an article written by Mr. Thorin Klasowski from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and I think many of us are familiar with EFF. They've been around for many years. They're very instrumental in a lot of the privacy laws we have, especially in the electronic area. So this article by Thorin talks about how to figure out what your car knows about you and maybe how to opt out of that information sharing. So, and they can disclose a lot of that information to third parties, again, hearkening back to what you may have signed at the dealership when you bought the car, you may have signed away that right and not even realized it. Because who reads all the legal jargon in a purchase contract, a lease contract, things like that? So be aware that you may have given permission to collect and share the data. He also references that particular New York Times article about the gentleman whose insurance jumped on him. And so that confirms that General Motors for sure shares that information. And I'm sure most major car manufacturers that are collecting telematic data from your car are sharing it through LexisNexis or someone like that, because they can actually sell it. They make money off of it. So, and this is not exclusive to your car. Some of you may be familiar with downloading apps on your phone that are specific for your car. My wife's new Subaru has an app on the phone that I can access, and it tells me what the tire pressures are and things like that. Of course, that means that same information can be shared with Subaru, who can then sell it to LexisNexis, who can then sell it to the insurance company or anybody else. So, if you look through the privacy policy that should be available on your car maker's website, the diagnostic data may be referred to as vehicle health data, something like that. It may be used for quality assurance reasons, research, of course, recall tracking, maybe to let you know specifically about a recall for your car, service issues, and sometimes things not even related to your car. And the data could be shared with the dealer that you frequent, repair companies that are everybody's connected with computers these days. And of course, location information is going to be collected in a lot of cars. People are familiar with OnStar, which has been around many years. So if you're in an accident, it'll even call and report the accident for you. So that means your car is tracking where you are, where you're going. And it collects a lot of information that may or may not be shared with third parties. Even some of the data may be used for advertising. You may get advertisements from the dealer you bought the car from in your email. If you shared your email, I assume you did. Your daily driving habits, the discussion about his friend going to McDonald's in the car saying, well, you know, traffic is light on the way to McDonald's. So your car begins to learn what you do and where you go. This data can also be shared with law enforcement. Of course, usually that requires a warrant of some sort. And the information might be referred to as driving data, driver behavior information. This again can be shared with insurance companies. A friend of mine has a Tesla, and Tesla offers car insurance, but the car rats you out to Tesla's insurance. And if you brake too hard, too frequently, or accelerate too fast, too frequently, your insurance rates go up. So the data that each car shares may be different. So you may have to look on each manufacturer's website of the car you own to find out what they share. So, and this article from the EFF, you probably are familiar with the little dongles you plug into the OBD port on your car that the insurance company says, okay, you plug this in and we'll lower your insurance rate. Well, of course, that supposes you drive safely. But if you don't, then your rates are going to go up. So that was one way that information was shared before the general trend of cars being on the internet all the time themselves. Those dongles could make any car that had the OBD port online, so to speak. Now, every state except California, I found this interesting. I'm not a lawyer. California has some different stuff. They currently allow the use of telematics data for insurance ratings. And this protection varies across different states, so you have to be careful. California apparently does not allow that. So that just means the companies are going to jack your rates up arbitrarily. They don't care how good Judy drives. They're going to jack her rates up just as well as everybody else because they can't collect personalized information. So the opt-in programs that use the little dongle, of course, that information is going to be shared, and that's going to be used to control your rates. These internal systems that are on the more modern cars that don't require that aren't directly controlled by the insurance company, but of course, LexisNexis and these companies can send that information to insurance companies and then, of course, link it up to you, and then your rates may be adjusted accordingly. I would presume that they're more likely to raise your rates than to lower your rates based on driving data. So, and again, each car manufacturer might use a different term to refer to the way it collects information or its information collection program. Toyota calls it Insure Connect, which kind of hints that they're going to share it with your insurance company. Honda kind of inside of a policy that called driver feedback, but you have to enable that apparently. I don't have a Honda, so I don't know. And I know my wife's Subaru, it's just called My Subaru, I think, or something like that. So all these different systems you have to be careful of and read the information. Again, most of us probably signed a contract and didn't read it too closely. Each company, of course, shares different amounts of data. Some cars may be collecting a lot of data, but they may not be sharing all that data to third parties. The cars' data can also be used for what they call behavioral advertising. In other words, how often do you drive to McDonald's? Well, you might be getting more McDonald's ads. How often do you drive to Ralph's? You might be getting more Ralph's ads, and so on and so forth. And your ability to track how your data is used and where it goes is very difficult because there's an awful lot of companies involved, a lot of different state laws that affect the way they can do it. So there are some companies out there that have websites, of course, and you can go to these websites. One's called Privacy for Cars. There's a link in the notes, and you enter your car's VIN number, and the site will provide you a rough idea of what sorts of data your car is collecting. And apparently Mozilla even has a website that provides information about the car manufacturer's general overall practices. Most of us may or may not have heard the term infotainment system, which is, the mapping software that runs on the screen, the ability to control the temperature of the car, and so on and so forth. And when you go through that, probably the first time, you probably say yes to everything because you want your car to work properly and you want all that information showing up on the screen. But if you look carefully as you're going through all those screens, you may have the option of opting out of sharing any data coming from your car. But I don't know about you guys, but I didn't read the stuff on my wife's Subaru. I just hit yes and go ahead and let's get started. You know, who reads the manual? So if you want to keep track of this stuff, you're going to have to carefully read what you're saying yes to. One thing the Mozilla report on Tesla talked about is if you opt out of certain types of data sharing, their updates in the future may make your car undrivable. So that kind of makes me think of Microsoft and the threat to cut us off from Windows XP or Windows 7 as they've done in the past. I would hate to think that my car would become obsolete in 5 years because the manufacturer decides version 4.0 supersedes all previous versions and now you got to buy a brand new car to keep driving. So that kind of scares me a little bit. So read and understand the information, research it. It's boring, written by lawyers, of course. Those of us who may not be lawyers understand that's kind of crazy stuff. Those of you who might be lawyers, you know what I'm talking about. So look through the contracts for things like Insure Connect from Toyota. Kia calls theirs the driving score. So that's kind of a clue that Kia is sharing information through to insurance companies. Some other names, GM has something called Smart Driver. Honda has something called driver feedback. And Mitsubishi has something called driving score. So that's kind of a clue that they're probably going to share information that will probably eventually get to your insurance company. I don't know if they're sharing information with the DMV. There's a very high likelihood they might be. So who knows? Sometimes you may go to renew your license plate and they tell you no because you're a bad driver. I hate to see that come to that, but Big Brother gets involved whenever Big Brother can. If you can't find anything through some of the online links, you might just need to talk to your insurance agent. Hopefully they will understand how their insurance company collects data and how you can affect it with your driving. Now, the next thing, you can go to each manufacturer's website and request that they don't share your data with anybody else. Not every manufacturer has the same options, and some of them may only allow you to do that in states that require them to allow you to do that. A lot of this is dependent on state law. There's a link in the notes that shows a list of which states have the different types of laws. Some of the states you might have, it might be called a right to know or a right to access, which lets you get a copy of the data that the company has collected about you. And another option that might be, some of these states allow the information to be portable. So they have a guaranteed data portability, which means you can download it in electronic format. The other possibility is you could also, on your car manufacturer's website, request they not share your information with any third party. So the information would still be held at your car manufacturer's website or in their database, but you've revoked your permission to share that data. And again, it doesn't hurt to ask. These are some of the links for the different companies. I have not explored all the links. I went to the Subaru website because of my wife's Subaru, and I thought I'd take a look there. And the forum looks very similar to the one on LexisNexis. It has some options about opting out. You do have to put all your information in, the VIN number and so forth. And it has an option to send you a report on what data they have collected, but all the websites somewhere buried in their legalese make it clear that if the state you live in does not mandate that they do that, they're not going to do it. So be ready to fight that battle. Again, I have not explored the other links. I looked at Subaru. I have not sent a request in yet. The other thing to be aware of is they're going to ask for your email address. And in the case of LexisNexis, when I filled the form out, the email I received was a verification email that I had to click on the link so that they would not submit or fill out the request for me unless I verified my email. So that makes sense because a lot of companies do that. They want to verify that the email you gave them is correct. Of course, that also means they're probably looking to sell that email address to one of the data brokers. So I'm always skeptical. I guess I'm a little skeptical sometimes. The two data brokers that I was aware of are LexisNexis and Verisk. I've looked at LexisNexis. I have not looked at Verisk. LexisNexis I always thought was just a big database, sort of like a big encyclopedia. I never realized that they were in the data broker business until I read some of these articles. They claim in the article written by Thorin that you might have to wait up 45 to 90 days to receive your report. Again, I got mine in about a week, so I was very surprised. Although I didn't get the report, I got a letter telling me how to get the report. You may be able to get the data electronically in a CSV file, PDF, XLS, so on and so forth. Depends on how the company that's going to send it to you bundles it. It might even be just a simple HTML file. So if you get one that's a CSV file or an XLS file, something like that, you can always use Google Sheets or LibreOffice to open it if you don't have a spreadsheet program installed on your computer. And the article by Thorin talks about, again, EFF is very focused on privacy, that without a national law that puts privacy first, there's not much we can do to stop the sharing. We are just simply at the mercy of the corporate juggernaut. I think it's getting better. I know because California's got some very strict laws and some other states have begun to follow their example, and that might urge the federal government to move that direction also. But again, we can opt out in a lot of these cases if we read the contracts, look for keywords that might clue us in as to what rights we're signing away. A lot of people don't realize that sometimes when you lease a car or buy get a loan from the dealership or the manufacturer, that you might be signing away your right to sue them if something goes wrong. You might be agreeing to mediation only. Be careful of what you read. Not being lawyers, most of us, it's hard to plow through all that language, but look for keywords. Things like opt-out or right to know, disclosure, things like that. These links are pretty good in the notes. So once you receive the notes, don't hesitate to follow them. I'm going to back up to the previous slide. One thing you'll notice, BMW up here, but that applies to BMW Mini and Rolls-Royce products. Of course, some of the ones like Ford and GM we know, but look at these things and figure out if you own an Audi, it's actually the Volkswagen that owns Audi. So you have to go to Volkswagen site if you have an Audi. If you have a Rolls-Royce, I would have thought Rolls-Royce would have had their own website, but I guess BMW owns them. So that's my presentation. It was rather brief, and I hope I didn't put too many of you to sleep. And with that, I'll hand it back to John.
Thank you so much. I don't know that if I feel good about coming to hear this today or not, but we need to make everybody aware. So, when you get your follow-up material, do follow those links or check them out for yourself and find out just what your car is doing on you. I guess that's when you have the more electronics that you have, the worse it gets in your car. We'll check with Judy as see if she's got some specific questions for you right now. And she's kind of like our ballot counter. She goes through the system and copies and pastes so she can read them back and everything. And then we'll see.
I do.
All right.
And Jolene says, I know my car does because State Farm offers a Bluetooth mileage location tracker. It reduced my monthly payment by $10. I'm in California. I have a 2013 Matrix, so I'm not going to have anything that anybody has. I've had the Matrix for over 20 years. I'm on my second one. I burned the engine out on the first one, hot rodding onto the freeway, like my son told me never to do. But we are very privacy oriented in California as to why, we don't have those kinds of things that you're talking about. We have the most stringent internet policy. When we go to a website, we can opt out of everything but the kitchen sink, and other states have followed us, but they're not as stringent. And the government is working on one of those for everybody type thing. So I imagine, as Dale said, that would probably, happen. But again, California's got the most stringent privacy laws or rules around. Let's see. Oh, what does OBD stand for?
Onboard diagnostics.
Okay, thank you. And to rebut what I said about California, Bill James says, why is this a bad thing? I would think this would encourage safer drivers. Again, State Farm rewards safer drivers. And the Canadian Automobile Association offers a dongle at no additional cost. They stated insurance rates would not, all in caps, go up no matter what, but you could get a discount for good driving, and here you got a 15% discount after the first year of having it installed. Privacy versus discount, And Jolene has My Hyundai, and she also doubles up with Android Auto. If one opts out, do they assume the worst and therefore raise your rates?
As I understand it, the insurance companies for forever have rated based on geographic information, just your age, your sex, your race, your physical location, where your car is garaged. Those are general characteristics. So, for example, Denver has the highest car theft rate in the country at the moment. So, needless to say, rates in Colorado are higher based on that fact. So, the discounts that the insurance companies are offering for the dongles that you install or the Bluetooth, typical trade-off there is, again, you're giving away personal information for a discount. And I would, you have to balance the two. You have to say, well, am I willing to let them have more personal information, even though I'm driving the old 15-year-old car? One thing I will tell you, a friend of mine who owns a Tesla, who tried the Tesla insurance, discovered, much to his chagrin, that after having somebody pull out in front of him and slamming on the brakes a couple times, they actually raised his rates. And it wasn't that he, because he tracked it down, if you will, and found out why they raised his rates. And it was because of what they described as excessive hard braking. And the only thing he could think of is when people pull out in front of you, you have to hit the brakes or you hit them. So you can't control that. So the information may or may not be used in a judicious way when you share it with the insurance company.
And my farmer's was just renewed and it didn't go up. My house went up because I live in a fire zone. It went up really high. And I'm sure yours are like mine, but my insurance is rated on how far I drive. And it was much more when I drove down to San Fernando Valley, Woodland Hills, and when I commuted to work.
Right.
Let's see. And we got a notice that there are hundreds of data brokers. So I thought that was very interesting, Dale. We find out about this. Everybody is watching everything we do. We used to have drones going all around my Santa Clarita Valley. I'm 35 miles northwest of LA. And the city has them, and because not everybody pulls permits. So they have, back in the day, had drones they would put up and they would look and compare to see if you had anything new on your house or your backyard is shorter because you added something in the back. Kurt, it's your turn. Can people be unmuting themselves, Mr. Kennedy? There you go.
Okay. I used to work for an insurance company a long time ago, and I think a lot of things are not understood well. Okay. Your insurance rate is based upon underwriting, where they collect the information that is available for you and about you to determine what rate is appropriate. Now, in doing that, one thing that is not allowed is consideration of your race. Okay. Not a valid rating criteria. Where you live is the crime rate where you live, how much you drive, whether you drive to work, how far you drive to work. As an example, my last full-time job was I drove 5.7 miles to work each day and then back. Okay. Under 6 miles is not considered driving to work. So I didn't get my rate adjusted upward because of that exposure. Okay. The systems that, there was an example here of somebody slamming on their brakes a couple times rather hard. Okay. It is possible that that's not something that was under control of the driver, although If I'm an underwriter, I'm going to say you ought to be driving more carefully so you don't have to do that. One other thing, just because you are using a GPS system, okay, certainly the GPS systems that you buy over the counter, the things from Garmin and things like that, using one of those may give you route information, but it doesn't report what you're doing.
Right.
The GPS system does not require your device to do any outbound communication. It's all based on receiving, and nobody knows what you're receiving or what you're doing it with. Now, with that said, okay, other applications, Waze is a great one. Okay, I love Waze. Okay, but it also takes and keeps track of where I am. When you turn the application on, it'll tell you that 473 Wazers are around you. Okay, I've noticed that when I pull up at a stoplight and there's a Wendy's on the corner, I'm likely to get a Wendy's ad. Okay, and a button that says "Drive me there." Okay, that advertising pays for the application, and that things like tire pressure monitoring systems are very unlikely to take any and transmit any data other than to your car's electronics. I use one of them. I was preparing to go on a trip a couple of weeks ago, and what I normally do is I pull out a bottle of compressed air, about the size of a 20-pound propane tank, and I go around and I check all my tire pressures. And I'm saying, gee, it's raining outside. I don't want to do that. I turned it on the app, measured the pressure in all 4 tires. Great thing. That didn't transmit anything to Toyota. I'm convinced of that. So systems like OnStore and that, yes, they track your data, and that. I think I've gone on long enough.
A question from Canada. I'm assuming these may apply to the same vehicles in Canada, since many are made in the US.
I would assume so, but again, the local laws or the Canadian laws may affect them differently. But the telematics, as far as I know, do the same thing. And Kurt made a good point about if you buy a Garmin GPS, of course, it does not transmit, it only receives. But the internal mapping program that might be in your car built in, I know for a fact does transmit your location, because I can find my car with my app, even when the car is off. So I can also check the tire pressure when my car is off. So some cars share all the data or send all the data, some cars don't. So again, it's variable.
This is from me. Will you please put the link to the IAPP article in the chat box to me?
The what?
Will you put the link to the IAPP article, which lists the state laws, in the chat box to me?
I can do that.
Thank you so much. Hey, this presentation was timely. I'm shopping for a new car and concerned about data collection and tracking. Are there any new vehicles without these features? Data sharing.
I honestly don't know. I would assume if it has a link, whether it be satellite or, local internet, cell phone tower based, it's sending data. If it has a telematics system or what they call an infotainment system, I'm assuming it's collecting a ton of data and probably sending it up at least to the car manufacturer.
And with my farmer's renewal, they wanted me to take a picture of my mileage. It wasn't just put your mileage in the form. It was no, take a picture of it and send it to us, please. Do you have any comments about GDPR and why we don't have it?
I'm not familiar with what GDPR is exactly.
Kurt, do you know? Unmute.
Okay, GDPR is European regulations.
Well, that's how we got HTTPS, because the EU and Google thought everybody website needed that. So obviously nobody's working with those in Europe, would be my off the cuff. I have a Subaru and am in Australia. Every time I start, I see Starlink comes up on the screen and I get a message that software is up to date. I'd be interested to see how I can follow up your information in Australia. Do you know if using Android Auto app collects data as well?
I'm not sure if the Android Auto app itself, because as I understand it, that's simply a link between your Android phone and the car system. But as someone mentioned earlier, if you use Waze or Google Maps, those applications are probably sharing your data with the company. In the case of Waze and Google Maps, they're both owned by Google. So Google knows everywhere you go and everywhere you park and so on and so forth. Even if you have your Android phone in your pocket, it knows where you're going unless you turn off location services. But Australia may have different laws. So again, your mileage may vary.
Are there positive aspects such as theft of vehicles?
Well, yeah, I think, the possibility of recovering a stolen vehicle, I forget the name of the system that police can use to track stolen cars, but with all the new modern location systems in the cars, I suspect, again, I can figure out where my Subaru is even when it's off. If it's parked somewhere and the engine's shut off, it's still the last location that it was. Now, again, if they put it on the back of a flatbed truck and drive it away, I might not be able to find it until they turn it on.
Okay, Bob, you're on.
Yes. One of the things when I checked about my insurance from Geico, and they wanted to give me a discount if I gave them, I had to use my cell phone to track myself. So I asked them, I said, well, if I'm not driving, but my wife is sitting in the back and my phone is off, it's not tracking me, but it's tracking through my wife's phone. They said, it doesn't matter if she's driving or not. You're going to be, if you do a hard brake, they're going to know it. I said, well, what if she's with somebody else who's driving with a friend and she's driving with a friend and her phone is on? What happens when they're going to track that as her driving the car? But she's not driving the car. She's a passenger. So I forget that. I don't want your $50. You can keep it.
Yeah, the same thing applies if you ride the bus or the local light rail.
So what good is this if they're tracking your phone? It's all on your phone, and they're tracking you, and you're not even driving the freaking car.
Well, again, there's trade-offs to get that discount.
That's not a discount. You're tracking somebody else's driving. Well, this is all very interesting, but what really bothers me, and I look at this, all of us being of our age, if anybody remembers Ralph Nader, we had consumer things that he took care of. Now he's gone, And every single company, every entity wants all of your friggin' information because they, like you say, they make a ton of money off of you. And we
Yep.
have no control over it. They're making the money and we're giving them the information that we don't even have any control over.
Yep.
So, you know, we need another Ralph Nader is what we need, and the government and all of them need to stop. We need to be able to opt out, and we can't opt out. You can't do it. And like you say, who reads all the fine print on all these documents? You know, you get a document, it will take you a week just to read through it. And they want you to sign it right there at the dealership. Oh, no, you just put your initial here, put your initial here. You don't even read it. Then you get home, you read it and say, God, I just buried myself back in Connecticut. I live in Florida. It's unbelievable with what the government is doing to us. And the companies, actually, because that's who it really is. It's not just the government. The
Right.
government needs to put rules in because the companies are going to do whatever they can. Just they're constantly seeing Google's being charged with its doing things. Google, you have Meta, that used to be Facebook. They were tracking all of you with that analytics thing that they had. It's unbelievable. So, you know, like you say, the minute you got, when your old days, when you had a phone line, a regular phone line, a line to your house as opposed to wireless, you put your number, your name in the phone book. Well, guess what? People say, well, I'm not on the internet. You had your number in the phone book way back when. You're on the internet. Doesn't make any difference. That's my squill.
Just for grins, I'm going to get in touch with the speaker we had that works at Consumer Reports and see if something like this is on their radar. They just sent me something about they're looking at Lunchables for kids in school. They contain metal. Well, we certainly don't want our grandkids in school, elementary school, eating metal when that's what the school district provides as a free lunch. So I'll ask him if this is, you know, something that they're interested in. Peter Hess, it's your turn.
Just a second. Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. This is a new headset, so I'm just testing it out. Since LexisNexis was mentioned in the presentation, I'll say that I used to work there as a customer support rep, and when I started there in '98, I was able to have access to all of their products. But even though I had been checked out by the Secret Service to photograph the president, LexisNexis got new products and wouldn't let me have access to the newer ones. It's scary what LexisNexis has, and other data brokers as well. By the way, GDPR, that was my question. And the data brokers like LexisNexis are fighting GDPR. GDPR is a European protection regulation. It stands for General Data Protection Regulation. Part of the reason why I ask about it is that DMA is looking for a speaker to talk about GDPR and maybe how we can get that kind of level of regulation over data brokers in the United States. So anyway, just my words. If you saw the movie about oh geez, one of the guys who submitted the government data to the government to the news media, to WikiLeaks. It's not the guy who owns WikiLeaks, but one of the people who submitted to him. There was a movie about it, and some of those things that we did at LexisNexis were listed in that movie very quietly and in the background. But scary stuff what Lexis has.
Yep. And regarding the person who gets something from Discover, their credit card, I do. You sign up for it and they send me something every month that says, hey, good job. My social security number is not out on the dark web. I have not been hacked any place on anybody's database, blah, blah, blah. And it's just something that they offer for free. AAA used to do it for free, but now they charge. And of course, Discover would like you to pay, and they have the full-blown thing like Norton, the LifeLock stuff. And I'm happy with just knowing about the dark web and things like that. Robert Reiner, it's your turn.
Thank you for taking my question. First, a comment. I do not own a new car. I'm in the market to get one, so I thought I need to know this. So this is coming from a point of ignorance. The question is, I should get one point of background. I learned electronics in high school when we was fixing TVs and whatnot. So my first reaction is when I'm listening to all this stuff is, how do I turn off the system in the car? Is there a fuse that I pull and that will defeat the internet access? And then they say, well, when you take it in for service, that won't work. Well, I'll put the fuse back in for that day. I'm interested. How do you physically say you're not going to track my car? That's the question, if anyone knows.
I would be skeptical that there's any single fuse you could pull to do that, because the electronics is so integrated that your braking system, for example, my wife's new Subaru, with all the automation, it'll lane keeping, it tells you when you drift out of the lane, it can automatically brake. So if you disable the entire electronic system, it may stop running altogether.
Okay, thank you. Kurt will be our last question.
You got Will out there.
Yeah, she can't see Will because he doesn't have a picture.
Oh. No, I found him.
Okay. So we'll let Will go.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate the presentation. It's pretty timely because we just bought a 2024 Toyota RAV4 hybrid, and I went on my app and I looked, and sure enough, every one of the trips I've taken since we bought that thing is on there under trips. And so far, my drive pulse says excellent, but it monitors for like harsh cornering, fast acceleration, harsh braking. And it gives you every trip that we've taken in this app, and it grades it on all those three parameters.
Wow.
Even though overall I'm excellent, overall, but on one of the trips, it's got me marked number 2 for harsh cornering. And then another one, it's got me another one for harsh cornering. I don't even know what the heck that means, but anyway, it has every trip in there in its entirety, listed all individually, and it marks you and grades you on each one of those. Every one of them is excellent, except one is fair. But what's interesting is I've got a lot of harsh cornering in there, which to me, I don't even understand, but I don't know what that really means. But I'm going to opt
Winding mountain roads.
yeah. Well, anyway, it does have an opt out right on the top, but I didn't even know it had it. So you might want anybody that has a newer car to kind of look through the app that you had to download to get all this new stuff to work, and to find your car and turn your car on and off and all this other stuff they have now. But it's really interesting what it collects. It knows exactly what you're doing and how you're driving. So it's no wonder the insurance rates may be affected. Anyway, thanks, Dale. Appreciate the input. It really helps out.
I can't wait to tell my daughter, who just bought a Kia EV, about this. And I bet her husband's car is new enough that they've got it on there, that one too. Oh, how fun. Fun and games. Kurt, you got it.
I have a flippant remark about the one switch that you can pull. Disconnect the battery cable. No problem.
Oh, works for me. Oh, I'm sorry. There's Diane. Where'd she go? There you are. And you're sleeveless, and I've got a sweater on in California. Oh, darn it. Go on, Diane. You're muted, kiddo.
Oh, I got to fix that.
Oh. John just fixed it for you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say I have a Subaru, and listening to him talk about that, and that car actually scares me to death. It knows more than I do. I am so tired of it telling me to keep my eyes on the road, because I do keep my eyes on the road, and you will not believe the other things it tells me. And then this app that we have will be in the house, and all of a sudden it'll pop up and say something about the car, and I'm thinking, why is the car telling me it's in the garage? Yeah, I don't know anything about this app, and I'm pretty tech savvy. And anyway, I love the car, but I just wanted to comment about that. There are many, many things I don't know about this car.
And I remember when you went with your new car from CDs to
Yeah,
all of this electronic stuff. And she said, Judy, do you have anybody that gives that presentation? And I checked with one presenter, and his comment was, oh, everybody knows how to use their stuff. And I thought, really? And
no,
Ray Baxter mentioned it to him, and he said, I'll put a presentation together, because he does our music stuff. And his presentation is about, all of the new things regarding your music, and you don't have a radio, you don't have a CD, DVD player anymore. And it's quite good. And thank you, Diane, for suggesting that.
yeah, I had him give that to our club. That is a great presentation. Kudos to that one.
Yep. Jerry Crow.
There he is.
Thank you, John. Real quick question. I'm just pounding my desk here because the daylight time, I missed the first hour of this, and I'm just furious that I didn't get to hear this wonderful presentation. Can I ask the app you're talking about? Where do I get that? That's all I need to know.
The app, I'm not sure.
Well, everybody keeps talking about an app that shows them data about where they're driving and all that.
Comes with a car.
Oh, it does. Well, all right. I'll have to check. I've got a Toyota Camry. I'll have to check and see if
How old is it?
2020.
It should have it.
Well, it has all the stuff, the lane departure alert and the radar and all that kind of stuff. So I'll look for it. Thank you, Dale.
Okay, oh, good. Then I'm going to my youngest daughter and blow her mind up, who's looking over her shoulder. She drives like her mother does. Oh, well. Anyway, thank you very much, Dale. Lots of really good discussion.